afternoon. This is Jerry Lee with Three Sisters Broom Shop located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, North Idaho, if you don't know. Like, I'm 20 minutes from Spokane, which I lovingly call Spokey Dunk, Spokane, Washington, and I'm about 3 hours from St. Regis, Montana. So, you know, I'm in the Panhandle. This is going to be a really short video, and I'm going to explain just the smallest of things about dyeing, because there's some D-Y-E-I-N-G, not the other thing, because I want people to know that you can dye on a budget, and you can also do the other thing on a budget too. When I first got into broom making, all my brooms were natural colored, and that was because I didn't know better. I did not know anything about anything, so all my stuff was natural. And we're out in one of my shops. I have two shops now. I've grown that big that I actually have a shop here where I live, and then I've rented a very, very large garage space for my friend Chris also. So because I have a lot of broom corn, because I grew the business from a shoestring, that's why. All right, now let's see where are we heading with this. When I got into dyeing broom corn, there was no information about how to do it. And as far as I know, there's still not, except for what I've put out there. If there is, I just haven't seen it, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. But my experience in the broom world has, and it's actually true, I think, in anything that you do, is sometimes there's just not a lot of sharing. And I was in the commercial embroidery industry for 30 years almost, and I was an embroidery designer. I designed in thread on the screen, and then it would come out on the machines. But I was what is called a digitizer, and I trained people in that. I was a world-class digitizer. But through some things, some life challenges with my ex-spouse, we had to part ways, and eventually I got out of embroidery as a result. So what I did is I took no money, because I had no money, and I invested my efforts into myself, and I decided to become a broom maker. Again, no information out there. There was hardly any information at all. So, and that's why I am so determined to get information out, is so that you don't end up like I did. At one point, I was sitting in my backyard. I had $300 worth of Dharma Trading Company dyes that are not appropriate for my work here. They were cold water dyes, and I sat in my backyard and sobbed on a pallet because nobody would give any information. Nobody would even give you, the slightest clue. And that's when I was like, okay, I've been through the whole, we're not going to tell and share anything to the new people in the embroidery world. And it got blown open by somebody. It wasn't me, because I didn't have that knowledge or the ability. But a gentleman came in, and he was like, enough is enough. He'd been in, his family had been in commercial embroidery for 6 generations, which is a lot. And when he said there was gatekeeping, he wasn't kidding. So he decided that there wasn't going to be that on his watch. Didn't make him very popular with commercial embroiders, I will tell you that. It did not make Walter popular whatsoever. But it made my world go, and that's how my work ended up in the Oval Office. No, it's not there now, but it was for a minute. This was a few administrations ago. But at any rate, I was very familiar with that kind of thing of no share, no share. Shh. So I decided, you know what? I have always been a rogue. I'm going to stay that way. It doesn't mean it's popular, but it means it's what I do. And I decided to start sharing things that I was learning so other people wouldn't have to sit in a backyard with $300 worth of dye that they can't use and possibly give up a dream because you know, I was like, no, 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 no. So what I did is I taught myself to dye. And now I spread the word on how to dye. And if you want to see me do that in person, you'll have to see me in Carlinville on either October 11th or 12th of this year. And I'm not sure which day that class is scheduled for. But today I'm not giving like a bunch of class information. I just want to let you know that you can start with nothing and end up with something. It's up to you. My first dye pot was basically your regular, little pot that you cook spaghetti in, like the little low pot that we cook chili in or whatever. I went to the thrift store and I got a pan, and then I did it in my kitchen just once, just once, for the winter, because it snows here like a lot. And in the winter I couldn't dye, but I also could not bring myself, I didn't have the money to buy dyed broom corn. I just didn't have it. Again, shoestring, recently divorced, lost my business, lost my career, everything went with that. And so, I was like, well, you're starting over, so you're starting over, and that's that. So I did it that way. I did it on the cheap. I started out trying to figure out what dyes, and long story short, here's something I discovered. When you go to the grocery store or the craft store, whatever, and you buy a little tiny box of RIT for $4.50 or $3 or whatever it is, you know what that is? This, in little teeny tiny boxes that are very expensive. I buy RIT Proline. I buy it in the 1 pound and the 5 pound. The 1 pound, the reason I have these in 1 pound is because these colors don't come in 5 pound. It's the only reason. I did have someone tell me that they couldn't use the Proline because they're not pros. You don't have to be anything to use the Proline. You just have to want to make the investment into 1 pound of dye and 5 pound of dyes. They'll sell it to you. It's you don't have to have a wholesale account or anything. But this pound could make how many of those little boxes that have like 1 ounce or 2 ounce, of dye in them? It's the very same thing. The Proline is not the same thing as the dye that is in, and I don't have one here anywhere, but that's in the little bottles, the synthetic, and then they have one for something else. They're not the same colors. It's not the same stuff. It is by RIT, but it's not the same stuff. It doesn't dye the same. Some people have really, really good luck with that stuff, with the liquid. And for me, it's not cost effective, and it doesn't give me the deep, rich colors, which I've come to learn how to do. So when you get your dye, the reason I use RIT is because it's the most earth-friendly thing I can find. It's safe for the watershed. It's safe for the animals. You can put it in your washing machine and dye your clothes. And so then it goes into the sewer. So what's that say? It's safe that way. I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to wear goggles. And I think with some of the commercial dyes, you do have to do those things. Also, I don't need to use soda ash to set my dye. Soda ash, if it is synthetic, is extremely hard on Mother Earth. The thing about RIT, it's got all the mordant in it, M-O-R-D-A-N-T. What that means is that it's got setting agents in it to make the dye set into your cloth, into your broom corn, into whatever you're dyeing. You don't have to add things to it. And that to me is wonderful. I've heard of people rinsing their broom corn in vinegar or soaking it in vinegar or something first before they dye it. You do not need to do that. You don't need to add vinegar to the water. You don't need to add salt to the water. You don't need to do any of that at all. It's already in the bag. Just put it in there. So you can use a turkey fryer. You can use lots of different things. I went from using that small pan that I got at the thrift store in my very first year to where I am now. But there was lots of pans and trials between. What I use now are the stainless steel They're brewing kettles, beer brewing kettles. And the reason I use those is because they're stainless steel, for one. The most important things to me, and the most important thing overall, is that it has a spigot on the bottom that I can drain the dye out of. I attach a hose and then drain it to a very specific spot. And yes, the plants still grow. And yes, the little insects are all still there. No, they're not morphed into something or, weird. Everybody's fine. So, anyway, the deal is that if you want to dye, then go do it. I couldn't afford the dyed broom corn, and I wasn't sure what was making it so expensive out there. And it is expensive. There's one gal out there that sells it for almost $40 a pound. When I sell mine, when I used to, it was never that high. But I've had people tell me, oh, I'm just going to go dye myself. I'm not meaning themselves, but they're going to go dye for themselves because they don't think that whatever's being charged is a good asking price. They think it's way overpriced. Well, here's the deal. Somebody came to me once after they started dyeing and admitted that maybe they had made a mistake, that they understood now why people charge what they do when they're dyeing. It's hard work. It's very hard work. It's dangerous. You're out there no matter what. I don't have somewhere to, like some people do, have an area where they have an inside building and they can put their dye on racks, and then they have fans and they can dye all year. I'm not that person. I use solar heat, and I dye during the summer months here in Coeur d'Alene. And when it rains, I don't dye. When it rains, it just rains. So when I am dyeing, I go really hard because, I'm going with the weather. That's why. But were I to charge $40 a pound, I'd be charging what I thought was a fair price. I don't charge that. When I was selling it for $25 a pound and $30 a pound, depending on what it was. And then when I use something that I can't get in a 5-pound bag, such as a neon, I was not really selling those because they're kind of cost prohibitive. The reason I quit selling dyed broom corn is because I couldn't keep up with the orders of people wanting to buy the broom corn, dyed broom corn. And I never got to make a broom. Once I started selling, I saw everybody else making brooms, but I couldn't because I was packing so many orders, or I was outside working the dye pots to fill the orders. And that wasn't why I got into broom making. But I tried it because, it's a good market. If you want to sell, that's probably a good thing. I don't recommend $40 a pound. I just think that's really high. But we all got to do what we got to do, right? So anyway, you can do dyeing, like I said, on a shoestring. You can do it your way. You can use the solar. You can put fans under it. One gal I know, she has a really long black asphalt driveway, so she puts hers out on that, and it dries lickety-split. So start small and go up, or do whatever you need to do. You do not need to jump out there and start buying 1-pound bags or 5-pound bags. You don't need to do that. You don't need to go out and get a whole bunch of camp stoves and the beer brewing kettles. Those aren't cheap. Those are like 200 and some odd, probably. Well, with the tariffs now, they're going to be higher. I was paying $219, $220 or something like that, and for those brew kettles. And they're probably much higher now. I don't know. I haven't checked. I don't need one. But just start small and get what you can. Turkey cookers, a lot of people using those. I see people using them all the time. They're using, there's these chef things that are like, they're those flat pans that they have, like, say, at a Chinese buffet or something, or any buffet where they have those big metal pans. Well, there's some 22 inchers out there that people are using too. I was never able to find those. But when I dye in vast quantity. I dye thousands of pounds. I have dyed thousands of pounds. I do about 1,000 a year. So that's a lot, and doing it in small increments just would not work for me. Every batch is a small batch, if you want to call it a small batch. I can only get 6 bundles in one of those pots. I can actually get 7, but the dye distribution isn't good with 7, so I dialed it back to 6. So whenever I am putting in broom corn into my pots, it's going to be 6 of these right here. And each one of these can weigh 4 to 5 pounds. So that's how much I can dye at one time in one of my pots. But I hope this answers some questions. I will be in Carlinville, and I will be teaching an in-person dye class there, October 11 and 12. The information of how you can find information on the classes that are at the Old Time Arts and Crafts Festival Conference is pinned to the top of my page here on Facebook. So you can go look at that information. You can call Rod back there in Illinois, and you can get information on how you sign up for classes. There's going to be a wheat weaving class. I want to go. There's canning classes. There's there's like every kind of class, blacksmithing. There's all sorts of classes for the way that things used to be. There's a broom making class that Rodney is doing. Rod Eichen is doing that. He's with Brooms of Breckenridge. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff, but I just wanted to pop out here real quick and just explain that dyeing is not hard. It's hard work. You will sweat. You will be bending over. You will get hot if you do it like I do. One of the most important things, and do not dye without these. That's my big, big, big recommendation. Get yourself some elbow-high heat-resistant gloves. If you dye without those, you can really be tragically burned. Okay, that water gets up to like 200 degrees and it's boiling, so you want to be careful, but you've got to move your broom corn around in it, so don't dye without protection, and dish gloves aren't going to do it. These things are, like I said, heat resistant, and they have this lining stuff in there. It does not prevent my hands from getting hot. It does prevent them from being burned, and it allows me to move my bundles or just lift the dye. You don't want it all over your hands anyway. It does get on my hands. You've seen my hands pretty dyed. But it washes off, and again, because it's RIT, I feel more comfortable with that. Some people have told me that I need to wear gloves at all times, but I don't find that easy to work with. And I'm only a little crazy after all the dye on my hands, right? So what's a little more? Really, it just really doesn't bother me. Maybe it should, but it doesn't. All right, that's it. I gotta go make some brooms. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.